So things are starting to get really intense because this failed flight attempt destroyed any remaining popularity that the French royals had, right? Louis, Marie, and all of their children have now proficiently embarrassed themselves to a point with this failed attempt to run away that now the Revolutionary Guard, the revolutionary people, and the revolutionary poor are so sick and tired and fed up with them that they're deciding, a lot of them, that they don't even want them around anymore, right? Now, the big thing about it, though, is as we're going on in this revolution, for a long time, the revolution was led almost purely by the National Assembly, right? So when we're looking at this thing, you got to understand we are seeing the rise of some new groups, right? We're seeing some new groups pop up during the French Revolution that are starting to actually demand different ways and different functionality to how we should actually fix this revolution, right? Well, one of these new groups is going to be called the Sans-Culottes, which they've actually been there the whole time. They just have never had a name, right? So the thing about it, though, in general, is you got to remember at the very beginning of the revolution, the bourgeois basically ran the whole thing, right? The National Assembly that was formed at the Tennis Court Oath, those are all bourgeois members, right? They're all the wealthier of the Third Estate members that are educated and classically trained and can go to this meeting to try and solve the financial crisis. Well, the thing about it is that it seems to me, though, that it's probably not a lot of bourgeois members who are marching on Versailles. These women, these poissards, are working women that marched on Versailles. They're from the poorer classes, right? The people who stormed the Bastille, those are from the poorer classes, right? So the thing about it is this whole time that we've been referring to those people as leading up to this is this the group called the mob, right? The mob of France and the mob of Paris and stuff like that. Well, at the beginning of the revolution, the bourgeois called themselves the National Assembly, and the mob did all the dirty work for them, right? They went and burned down the Bastille. They raided the Hotel des Invalides. They actually went and did all these different things. Well, the thing about it is after the failed flight, this mob is becoming self-aware, and they're like, you know what? There is not nearly enough violence or action in this revolution that I want, right? And the poorer people, the mob, is deciding that they want two things out of this revolution now. They are looking for more blood and they want more bread, right? They want to see people die and be executed for their crimes against the French people, and they want to be fed, right? Because they want simple, easy solutions. Well, the mob, as they begin to grow and actually begin to function, poorer members of the revolution who are actually pro-violence and pro-intense and pro-radical are calling themselves now the Sans-Culottes, which is actually a hilarious name. It makes me really, really happy. So these right here are members of the Sans-Culottes, right? You can see them right here wearing their red caps of liberty, wearing their tricolor cockades and stuff like that. But as you can see as well, their fashion and style and design is a little bit from the poorer echelons of society, right? These pants that they're wearing are very loose-fitting. Well, the thing about this funny little name is that this name, Sans-Culottes, literally means without pants, right? So like now they weren't running around like all Winnie the Pooh with just like one t-shirt on and no pants on. They actually wore loose-fitting trousers that working men would wear and stuff like that. Not these fancy pants that actually the bourgeois members wore that are actually known as like leggings or knickers at the time. K-I-N-I-C-K-E-R-S, right? So these like tight-fitting pants that rich people wore, they didn't wear those. So they were referred to themselves as the Sans-Culottes, right? And what they are is they are the organized mob members, right? They're the radical revolutionaries that believe that they want to see more intensity, more blood, more over the top. They want executions and want the rich and the wealthy and the royals included to be punished for the things that they have done against France, right? So this is a little bit of a scary moment in France because we're seeing the division of ideas, right? Now this is really, really important because the key central idea at the very, very beginning of the French Revolution was we want change. We want fairness, we want equality before the law, we want Enlightenment era values, right? Well, the thing about it is like by 1791, for those of you who have been paying attention, the revolution's been going on for 2 years now, right? So people are starting to disagree on where we go from here, right? And so the big thing that's also beginning to happen is that not only are the poor people like organizing themselves into these Sans-Culottes members that are very violent and very aggressive, but even the National Assembly, even the group that is pro-revolution is beginning to divide itself on how they believe things should be handled, right? What's getting up going down right now is you're seeing the rise of the clubs, right? Like so, and not clubs like these, right? Not clubs where everybody's around a disco ball and it's just like not clubs like that, okay? We're talking about clubs actually more like these, right? Clubs of organized free men and stuff like that that are getting together and deciding how they think the revolution should go, right? So the thing about it is you got to like kind of think about it like political parties, right? It's like political parties are beginning to rise up. And there's two key groups that you need to make sure you know. You got two of them, all right? You got two very different groups, but still two of them all the same. They start out as the Jacobins, and the other one is called the Girondins, right? And the way that they want to see the revolution go is the exact opposite from one another, okay? So the Jacobins, first and foremost, are the radical, the violent, the extreme, the intense, the over-the-top, right? They're the ones that believe that these uprisings by the sans-culottes, that the sans-culottes are right, that we should be actually punishing the nobles and executing them and getting after them and punishing people that actually disenfranchised France and put France in the situation where they had to have a revolution in the first place, right? But then you have the Girondins, right? And the Girondins are more moderate. They want to resist violence, and they want to actually bring the revolution to end using politics and view it politically, and they want to bring it to a soft, easier ending, right? They want everyone to just be happy and like copacetic with the fact that new governments have been elected, a legislative body, that we have a constitutional monarch now who's currently under house arrest and tried to run away, but like they actually have these different things. So you could say, for example, the Marquis de Lafayette is a Girondin, right? Because he wants better things. He wants to control the revolution. He wants to go into a certain direction, and he wants to bring about change, right? But the thing about it is we haven't met any of the Jacobins yet till now, right? So the Jacobins have three big key members that you need to make sure you know who they are, okay? So the very first one that you need to know, and write down like some little descriptions about each of them and stuff like that, and you will actually kind of help us out a little bit. But the first one that kind of exists by himself, he's a newspaper writer, right? He's a journalist. He goes by the name Jean-Paul Marat, and he is right here in the middle, right? So Jean-Paul Marat, who kind of looks like a rat and stuff like that, who actually is a very, very important little descriptor of him and stuff like that, Marat, M-A-R-A-T, J-E-A-N space, P-A-U-L space, M-A-R-A-T. Jean-Paul Marat is a very, very famous newspaper writer from the French Revolution. He actually was very famous for having one particular newspaper that was called La Ému des Poupées, and it actually looked like this. As you can see, it's actually called La Ému des Poupées. It literally means friend of the people, right? And he would write these different newspaper articles all the time, but he's a Jacobin newspaper writer. So all of these articles would be filled with these really extreme things, talking about Louis and how he was eating well, and talking about the nobles and how they destroyed France and how they put everyone in the position that they were in, right? And actually, at one point before the revolution ever even started, way before the revolution ever even started, like actually like back in the day, before like the National Assembly or the Estates General ever even like came to be, Marat actually had to live in the sewers of Paris to escape being arrested by the royals due to the fact that the royals wanted him arrested because he was writing slander about them, right? He was talking about, oh, Marie Antoinette cares more about Austria than she does about France and stuff like that. And he had to hide down in the sewers to keep from being arrested. And actually, I feel like that's the best way to remember him is because he's the rat, Marat, M-A-R-A-T, right? And so the thing about it as well is while he was living down in the sewers, he actually also got a skin disease. And he had to like sit in he had like a scaly skin disease where he had to sit in a medical bath for like 6 hours a day to actually like make it so like it didn't flake off and get all gross, right? But after the revolution started, he began to come out into the light and he began to talk about the different things about the revolution that he wanted to see happen, and the different intense things that he believed should go down as well, right? Now, the other two guys that you need to write down are very, very important are George Danton, G-E-O-R-G-E, George, and Danton is his last name, D-A-N-T-O-N. He's this guy that looks like a toad right over here, right? But him and his buddy, the more famous of the two, are very, very important key leaders of the Jacobin Club, right? The other guy is known as Maximilian, M-A-X-I-M-I-L-L-I-A-N, Robespierre, R-O-B-E-S-P-I-E-R-R-E, okay? Now, Maximilian Robespierre is considered like the tyrannical, intense guy from the entire French Revolution. He's the one that's super over the top, really, really intense, but him and George Danton actually ran the Jacobin Club together, right? They ran it together as like very best friends and very, very like co-compatriots, but the thing about it is George Danton and Maximilian Robespierre both believe in a central key core idea, that the royals need to die, right? Like, so they believe the royals need to die and that there needs to be blood and executions in the streets deciding how this revolution should go. So really, really quickly, when you actually look at two figures that don't believe in the same ideas, you have the Marquis de Lafayette on one side, who wants an orderly, not intense, not over-the-top revolution that gives people more rights and more Enlightenment freedoms. Whereas Maximilian Robespierre wants to purge and cleanse France through executions of the wealthy and royals, right? And George Danton is right there believing with him, and Jean-Paul Marat believes with them as well, right? So these famous Jacobins are going to become very important as we go forward. And the best way that I like to try to remember the Jacobins and the Girondins as well is I sometimes call the Jacobins Jerrys because they're kind of like Tom and Jerry, you know what I'm talking about? As in the Jerrys, the Jacobins, are really intense, and he like beats that cat almost to death with like a frying pan all the time and stuff like that, which is crazy. And the Girondins are a little bit more calm. They're a little bit more like Gary from SpongeBob with the nice little meow and all that fun stuff, right? So just so you understand, though, is that these two new groups are rising up, right? But then something crazy is going to happen that's going to distract everybody for a hot second, right? You got Maximilien Robespierre disagreeing with Marquis de Lafayette. You got some internal fighting in some different directions. But then all of a sudden, something big goes down. And revolutionary France is going to go to war, right? So the thing about it is, why, France, you're in the middle of a revolution? Why would you go to war at this point? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that you got to remember something very key here, okay? Remember, everybody else in Europe, they're an absolutist state, right? They're an absolutist state. Austria is ran by an absolutist. Prussia is ran by an absolutist. Russia is ran by an absolutist. All these other different countries and stuff like that, these empires throughout the rest of Europe are ran by these absolutist figures, right? And the thing about it is these absolutist figures are beginning to freak out and beginning to mobilize their militaries because they want to try and stop the French Revolution. Why do they want to stop the French Revolution? Because as Peyton Marlborough said in class the other day, and it was so poignant and so important and so smart of her to say this, but she says that these other kings and queens of Europe are probably afraid that the French Revolution, the idea of it, of people demanding more rights and demanding more freedoms and purging people, rich people out of their country, might spread to other countries in Europe, right? So we've got places like Austria who are freaking out, and also who are observing the princess, right, or excuse me, the queen of like France, who is the sister to Leopold, the king of Austria, possibly in danger and violent danger and stuff like that. And so the new French government, hearing about this, hearing about how they're making all these demands, because this right here is actually a meeting at this place called the Declaration of Pillnitz, where the royals, the Austrians got together and they were like, if you hurt Marie or Louis, we will destroy your country and this whole thing you are trying to do, right? And France did not take very nicely to that. You got people like Maximilien Robespierre, Jean-Paul Marat, Danton, and the Marquis de Lafayette at least agreeing on one thing, and they're like, don't you threaten me. So what ends up happening is the French Revolutionary government decides to get an army together, and they declare war on Austria for this slight, right? And so this ends up becoming the War of the First Coalition, right? Now, to give you a heads up, looking forward into the future, there are 7, count them, 7 wars of the coalitions, and France wins all of them but one. So something you need to understand, it's France you would think would be terrible at war by this point, right? You think like, oh, they're having a revolution. There's no way that this is going to go well. Well, what ended up happening, though, is they struggled early, but they came out as a massive underdog winner, right? And what is this going to do to French nationalism, right? And also, why is it called a coalition war, right? Well, it's because it wasn't just Austria versus France. It was Austria and Prussia joined together to fight against France, right? That is a coalition. A coalition is a group of people. It would be like if I was the revolutionary state and Mr. Madrano and Mr. Mathern joined forces together to come and fight me. They are the coalition, right? Just like Austria and Prussia did against France. But what is this going to do to French nationalism, right? Just to give you a heads up, nationalism is pride in your country, right? So what's going to happen here? Is the revolution going to simmer down and calm down and they're going to get to a more peaceful state? No, of course not. They're going to get so excited and turned up because they literally are winning a war as this new government, right? They're freaking out. They're flipping out. They're like, oh my God, we are awesome. We are fighting and winning wars. We got the king and queen under house arrest. They tried to run away and we caught them and all this other stuff. So what ends up going down though as well is you got some secret people in the background that are also growing their reputation. This guy right here becomes very important as we go forward. We looked at a picture of him in class, the Napoleon Plaza Shopping Center and stuff like that over on West Napoleon Avenue, which is right there, like parallel to Vets. That guy right there is Napoleon Bonaparte. He's actually getting a very young start in the military and stuff like that during this time period. And by 1792, he's actually in the French military. He's very pro-revolution, and he's getting his young upstart experience. And also, look at his hair right there. He thinks he's Alexander the Great, like flowing his hair back and forth and stuff like that. But this leads to such an important moment in French revolutionary history because they're winning this war. They're the underdogs. They shouldn't have won it in the first place, and it's leading to the growth of this French nationalism. And so just to demonstrate the growth of French nationalism and the intensity that this war is causing that France is winning, it led to a brand new song being written, a national anthem, if you will. It's known as La Marseillaise. It is the marching song of the Marseille soldiers, and it becomes the new song of everything France. Listen to the intensity, the crescendo in the background, how fantastic it sounds, and I love the actual French national anthem because it literally gets so intense, it's so over the top. And as you can hear it in the background and stuff like that, it talks about the day of glory is arriving and all this other stuff, that they're standing against tyranny and all these other things like that as well. And my favorite great line in it as well. It keeps going on, and it talks about how literally in the song they want to water the fields of their, they want to water their fields with the blood of their enemies. Who has songs like that, right? Talks about how they want to show up and slit the throats of your sons and stuff like that, and literally right here, we should water the furrows of our fields with the blood of our enemies, right? That is absolutely wild, right? That is so intense and so over the top. I love the French national anthem. It's so cool. You should definitely give it a listen if you ever get a chance, right? But what's going on back at home during all this crazy stuff while France is in the middle of a war and while they're in the middle of all this fighting? Well, what's going down is actually a lot of crazy violent stuff, right? What's going down is literally, well, first and foremost, the Tuileries, where the royals are underneath house arrest, is going to be attacked in August, right? During this entire thing, everybody back in France is finding out that literally the war is going down because they're trying to help Louis, because the Austrians and the Prussians want to get to him and help him and reinstall him as king. So the Sans-Culottes and the Jacobins are like, we ain't playing this garbage no more. And they attack the palace on August 10th, 1792. They go all the way in there. They kill a crap load of Swiss mercenaries, and a group of Sans-Culottes members, encouraged by the Jacobins or the Jerrys, stormed the palace where Louis was, and they captured him, and they took him prisoner, right? And they actually forced him to wear a red cap of the revolution to be like, look at that, you little nerd. You're actually one of us now, right? Ha, ha, ha. We're going to take your power away from you. So that means the King of France is now in the custody of the Jacobins and the Sans-Culottes members themselves. This man's power is gone. And it is a matter of days until his power is so completely shot that it's destroyed. And the only men they could find to actually defend him were actually Swiss mercenaries. And to give you a heads up what a mercenary is a soldier for hire. And this monument is actually over in Switzerland. I think it's outside of Lucerne, Switzerland, and it's a dying lion to represent the men, the Swiss people that died on the day trying to defend Louis from those Sans-Culottes members, right? But what's going down, though, is the Sans-Culottes members are freaking out. They're absolutely freaking out. And then a couple of days later, like a couple of weeks later, the September massacres happen, where roaming groups of poor people are roaming around, ripping prisoners out of prisons who are mostly priests at this time, who refuse to take that civil constitution of the clergy oath. They're ripping them into the streets, and the Jacobins are telling him to do it. Maximilien Robespierre, Jean-Paul Marat, Georges Danton are like, yeah, do it. Pull everybody into the streets and kill them, right? And after, literally this happened, in the September massacres, where hundreds of priests were pulled out into the streets, look at them all right here, praying praying as much as they could, and this man about to get stabbed in the face by a Sans-Culottes member. And you can also see right here as well, this headless torso being taken away. The September massacres was when the Jacobins and the Sans-Culottes members probably realized at that point that they are in control of this revolution now. And so what's going to happen is the king and queen, the